And I think that our suffering, yeah, I mean, if you have to quantify your pain and suffering and measure it against something else, I guarantee you I do not measure up to people who right now are strung out on fentanyl and meth and
Yeah.
right. That's just not going to happen. Having said that, for me, my suffering was the worst suffering I've ever experienced, and it was intense, and it was down. I was downright miserable. I'd self isolated. Um, like an image of me just crawling in a corner and pulling a blanket over myself so that no one could see. I couldn't walk, past a mirror and look at it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like I hated who I was. And there were pretty scary physical, I don't know. I mean, it sucked. It really sucked. And so my point of what drew me out of or kind of like, so I got to this point where I knew I was going to die. Okay. I knew I was going to die, if not physically, emotionally, psychologically, and any other kind of meaning and purpose that made life worth it. It was flickering, right? Any kind of meaning or purpose, as well as physical safety. Like I was physically sick and mentally like psychotic. The weed psychosis thing was real. The physical consequences of alcohol were real. And I reached this point where I knew I was going to die one way or another. And um, I mean, you had these moments in life that you can never forget, right? And I was at a bar, and it was kind of like at the tail end of like a bender, and I was with my girlfriend, and she was passed out in the bar. We kind of sink and rise to our own level, right? So she's like passed out in the bar, and it was this big high table, and she slumped over it, and it was just dangerous. And I remember it was like an out of body experience. I mean, not to be cheesy or corny, but I remember looking down at myself and this scene and this life and saying, is this really who you are in the life you want to live? And the army slogan, be all you can be, was running through my head. For some reason, just be all you can be, man. Like live your life. And I was so disgusted. I kind of like scooped her up and got her to the car. And drinking and driving means nothing to me. You know what I mean? When I got sober, I got in 2 or 3 car crashes.
Oh.
Oh God, yeah, because I can't explain it, but they weren't like huge car crashes, but they were on the highway, and I'm not, like I got into to 3 car crashes sober, and I drove. If I was awake, I was stoned for a decade or more, and drinking and driving. I've done 4 field sobriety tests, some in front of my kids, and never got in a crash. Hammered, should have, could have had many close calls. So I scoop her up, I drive her to her place, and I'm disgusted with everything about me, including her. And so I leave her, I just drop her off, and I'm driving home. And I fall asleep as I'm driving home on an off exchange of an interstate, and I jump the curb, and I'm like, whoa, I wake up and I get control of the car, and I get it on track, and I barely make it home with that adrenaline boost of like a shock. Wake up, hungover as I've ever been, equivalent of however it's been for the last probably 2 years of just misery. My head is pounding, my bowels aren't working. And I get out a piece of paper and I write down, I'm going to stop smoking weed. I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to start working. I'm going to be there for my kids. I'm going to be healthy. I kind of came up with this list, of what I need to do. And I'm done. I'm never going to smoke or drink again in my life. And I'm at the airport and I'm drinking again. Right? How many different ways and methods and attempts have we made at quitting?
I got a lot, Eric. I got the only hard alcohol on the weekends. No booze in the house,
Yeah.
only when you go out. And
If I could just smoke weed on the weekends or I would love that. I can't. If I
yeah.
have it, I'm gonna smoke it. And so I'm going to a place, and we talked about the gratitude list, and I'm going to see some people that really care about me, really care about me. And they knew I was at this point really sick. And for lack of a better way of describing it, they kind of did an intervention.
Mm.
And there was an AA meeting that someone, encouraged me to do. So I went to it. And there was the part of me that was open and willing and desperate. By the time you're crawling into an AA room, by the way, the first AA meeting I went to, I was in my 20s. I was in law school. That's how long I've been like, ugh.
Yeah.
And I was 45 now. Okay. When I'm talking about this, I'm 52. So I go to the AA meeting. I fly back to Seattle, and the first thing I do before, I'm getting my airplane mode off and I'm pulling up my phone, I'm like, I need to go to an AA meeting now. As soon as those wheels hit the ground, I get in my car, I go straight to an AA meeting in a city, suburb of Seattle. And I just show up there afraid, embarrassed, like not knowing what the hell I'm doing or why, except I need to be there. Something was telling me I need to be there. And I don't know, maybe 6 people are there. And in the grand scheme of, I'm showing up in a nice car and like nice shoes, and they're riding a bike, and, kind of, the clothes are torn, and they're saying the most profound things that I couldn't believe, like with kindness and understanding. And something happened in that moment where I was like, whoa, like there's something here. So I go back to my city. It was my home group, Gig Harbor. And I show up there, and I got lucky. You got to find a group that works with you and fits. And you know what I mean? Like that's a big part of it, is personalities. Mm-hmm. And I got a sponsor, and I just threw myself. I needed to do it, or I was going to die. And so that's how I did it.
This is the Knockin' Doorz Down podcast, featuring celebrities, experts, and everyday people who have overcome adversities, including addiction, mental health, and trauma, to live purposeful lives. And that's what Knockin' Doorz Down is all about.